The stagecoach arrives. The late summer sun hung low over the wide prairie, painting the horizon in shades of gold and red. Dust rose in lazy spirals, carried on the breeze, settling on the weathered boards of the stage station at Dry Creek. Eli Carson leaned against a hitching post, hat pulled low over his brow, boots planted firm in the dirt. He wasn't a man who waited well. Ranch work didn't leave room for idleness. Cattle needed tending, fences needed mending, and the land demanded every ounce of sweat a man could give. Yet here he stood, nervous in a way he hadn't been since he was a boy. For years he had lived alone on his spread of land, a good 3-day ride from the nearest town. He had come to peace with the silence, with the hollow echo of his boots across the cabin floor, with the long evenings when the only company he had was the wind howling outside. But the peace had turned heavy over the years. The quiet pressed harder. The days felt longer. That was when he'd answered the advertisement. A mail-order bride. A woman willing to leave behind whatever she had and come west to start fresh. He hadn't asked for much in his letters, just honesty, hard work, and someone who could stand the harshness of the prairie without breaking. The woman who replied, a Miss Sarah Whitfield, wrote plainly. She spoke of knowing how to bake bread, sew shirts, keep a home tidy. She didn't boast, didn't flatter, didn't spin fancy tales. Eli had told himself that was enough. He wasn't a man for romance. He didn't need beauty, didn't need charm. Just steady hands and a willing heart. The sound of wheels broke through his thoughts. Eli pushed off the post, his chest tightening as the stagecoach rumbled into sight. The team of 4 horses thundered down the road, dust rising behind them in a choking cloud. The driver, reins taut in his hands, guided the coach into the station yard and pulled hard to a stop. The horses snorted and pawed the ground. Eli set his jaw, forcing his breath to stay steady. The coach door swung open. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a figure stepped down, the driver offering a hand. Eli's breath stopped cold in his chest. The woman who emerged was no plain mail-order bride. She was radiant, her auburn hair gleaming in the sunlight, her skin pale and untouched by harsh weather, her figure graceful in a simple traveling dress that somehow seemed to belong in a ballroom. Her eyes, bright, uncertain, searching, met his, and Eli felt as though the ground had shifted beneath his boots. Every man in the yard paused to look. Even the driver tipped his hat, muttering something low under his breath. Eli could only stare. This wasn't the woman he'd expected. This wasn't the steady, ordinary partner he'd prepared himself for. This was a woman who looked like she belonged somewhere far away, far grander than his rough little cabin on the edge of nowhere. Yet she clutched her carpet bag tightly, her fingers trembling against the worn leather handle. She scanned the small crowd, her gaze returning to Eli. "You're Mr. Carson?" she asked, her voice soft, careful. Eli cleared his throat, shifting his hat in his hands. "Ma'am." Her lips curved into a nervous smile. "I'm Sarah Whitfield." The name struck him like a hammer. The same signature he had read in every letter. The same name he had whispered to himself in the quiet of his cabin. But nothing in those letters had prepared him for this. For a long moment, Eli could only stand there, heat rushing to his face, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had asked for ordinary. Instead, fate had sent him Sarah Whitfield, beautiful beyond reason, fragile and fierce all at once. And as the stage driver set her small trunk on the dirt beside her, Eli Carson knew his life had just changed forever. The heart of the ranch. The wagon wheels creaked as Eli hauled Sarah's trunk onto his buckboard. She stood nearby, hands folded tight against her skirts, her eyes sweeping across the horizon. The prairie stretched endless around them. No carriages, no fine shops, no lamps to chase away the dark. Just sky and grass and wind. "You'll get used to it," Eli said, his voice gruff as he steadied the horses. Sarah gave him a sidelong glance. "It's different than I imagined." He nodded once, climbing into the seat. When she hesitated, he offered his hand. Her fingers brushed his, delicate, smooth, not yet calloused by work. The touch lingered longer than it should have, and Eli cleared his throat. "Best we head out. Sun will be down before we reach the ranch." The road was long, the silence broken only by the creak of leather and the wind sighing across the grass. Sarah sat straight, bonnet ribbons fluttering against her throat, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Eli stole glances at her when he dared. She didn't fidget, didn't complain, though dust clung to her dress and hair. "You wrote different in your letters," Eli said finally. Sarah turned, brows lifting. "Different, plainer." He kept his eyes on the trail. "I expected someone who wouldn't turn every head in town." A faint smile tugged her lips. "And you don't like what you see?" Eli tightened his grip on the reins. "Don't reckon I deserve it." The words hung heavy between them until Sarah's voice broke the quiet. "Beauty never fed me, Mr. Carson. It never gave me a home. I didn't come here to be admired. I came here to belong." At the ranch, by the time they reached the homestead, twilight painted the sky in violet and gold. The cabin stood sturdy but plain, logs chinked with clay, smoke curling from a stone chimney. The barn leaned a little, fences sagged where storms had beaten them, but it was Eli's world, hard, honest, and his alone. Sarah stepped down, her skirts brushing the dust. She studied the cabin without disdain, only quiet thoughtfulness. "It looks strong," she said at last. Inside, she unpacked carefully, folding her dresses into the cedar chest, setting a small leather-bound Bible on the shelf. Eli lit the lantern, watching her move about the room with quiet grace. "I know it's not much," he muttered. Her smile was soft, genuine. "It's more than I had yesterday." Learning the land. The days that followed tested them both. Eli rose before dawn, expecting Sarah to remain behind, but more than once he found her at his side, sleeves rolled, determination set in her eyes. She burned bread the first time, pricked her fingers mending, and nearly got thrown trying to help with a stubborn cow. But she never quit. Eli tried not to watch her too closely, tried not to notice how the sunlight caught her hair, how her laughter carried across the fields when she succeeded at some small task. But the quiet cabin no longer echoed as it once had. One evening, after a storm tore down part of the fence, Eli returned to find Sarah waiting on the porch. Her hands were red from scrubbing, her dress smudged with dust, but her smile was steady. "You work harder than I expected," he said. She looked up at him, eyes bright despite her weariness. "And you treat me kinder than I was told to expect." For a long moment, they sat in silence, the prairie stars burning bright overhead. The truth between them. At last Sarah spoke, her voice low. "You still think I'm too beautiful for you, don't you?" Eli's jaw tightened. "Reckon I do." She turned to him fully now, her gaze unwavering. "Then hear me plain, Eli Carson. Beauty never saved me. It never kept me warm or put food in my belly. It only ever made people think I was something I'm not. You're the first man who ever wrote to me as though I was real. That's why I came. Not for the land, not for escape, for you." Eli's throat worked, his chest tight. Slowly, he reached across the space between them, rough hand covering hers. "I ain't good with words, but I'll tell you this plain. You're more than I ever thought I'd have, and I'll spend my days trying to be the man worthy of you." Her fingers tightened around his, strong and sure. And as the night wind whispered through the prairie grass, Eli knew he wasn't a loner anymore. He hadn't just gained a wife. He'd found the missing piece of his life.